All right, welcome back to the program. As I did say at the beginning of the program that I'll be looking at inflation in Nigeria and how we can combat it so that we can begin to have, a trending downwards inflation rate this year. Because I wonder what the report will be like for January if the National Bureau of Statistics releases, of course, the January inflation numbers. But if my guys are ready over there, do we have the inflation rates for last year? We did put all of that together from January to December, so they should start getting that ready so that we can take a look at the rates and how they were like in 2016. Skyrocketing, not good numbers at all, negative numbers. But my guest is with me right now, Paul Alaje. He's the lead economist at SPM Professionals. Mr. Alaje, good to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
How are you doing today?
Very fine.
Inflation. Anyway, are we ready with those cards so that we can actually take a look at how inflation, what the rates were like last year, so that for our viewers you would have a better understanding of what we'll be talking about this morning, and of course you have a better understanding of where we are coming from. We have the numbers for you from January to when? To December, isn't it? Yes. Those are the numbers on the screen. I was actually looking for mine here on the table. All right, for January, 9.62%. That was January of last year, 9.62%. In February, it skyrocketed to 11.38%. In March, 12.77%. In April, 13.72%. In May, 15.58%. In June, 16.48%. In July, 17.1%. In August, 17.6%. In September, 17.8%. In October, 18.33%. In November, 18.48%. In December, 18.5%. What more can I say? Those are the numbers for you. 2016 inflation rate, headline inflation rate in Nigeria. Of course, for those of you studying economics that, send me tweets or text messages or mails sometimes, take that down, write it down. Don't disturb me. For those that need those kind of numbers, you should definitely have it. And especially for economists such as Paul Alaje, these are the numbers they look at every month. Paul, you've seen the numbers. I know you also have yours.
Yes, I have
copy.
Mine. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think? We were not able to tame inflation last year. It went gaga, so to speak. Inflation was out of the roof. We saw the prices of goods and services skyrocket and all of that. Tell me, what's your reaction?
Well, my reaction to this is to look at what we are doing and what we ought to do that we are not doing. Is Nigeria's situation extremely unique that we have found ourselves in this situation? The answer will be no. A study of countries that have gone through the similar experience that we have, such as Mexico, Brazil, and also Singapore at one point in time or the other. Brazil, interestingly, has the kind of population as we have. Brazil is located in the southern part of America, Southern American as a continent, and is even the largest country, the largest country in terms of population in Southern America. Nigeria is in Africa, is the largest country in terms of population in Africa. Brazil has the largest GDP because it has largest population and what was done. But Brazil experienced something like what Nigeria is experiencing right now. Similarly, Nigeria right now has the largest economy. But what went wrong? Where did it go wrong? Beyond looking at inflation, we need to look at how monetary authority has been responding to inflation and what has been happening at interbank lending rate. That is, if bank needs fund on a short-term basis, how do they borrow or lend money to one another? All of this will also form how government will be responding to this and how government will be responding to inflation. As you rightly mentioned, 9.26, that was what the wake-up call for Nigeria. It was, 9.26, 62 in January. That was the beginning of the year, and Nigeria felt, no, this inflation figures is rather high. We need to do everything possible to keep it under 1 digit. But alas, we did not even see 10%. We went straight to 11.38. And when the Monetary Policy Committee was going to respond to that, they increased monetary policy rate from 11% to 12%. And if you see what they did, inflation kept increasing consistently, but they were not able to increase because at some point they sustained 12%. Why? Because if you look at interbank lending rate, at January it was 2.04, in February it was 2.67, in March it was 4.23, but something happened when you get to June because of time. When you get to June, it went from what you had in May, which was 7.67, to 35.26. Massive. That was unprecedented. Massive. The jump was so high. Then what was the reaction of Monetary Policy Committee setting monetary policy rate? Is to now take monetary policy rate from 12% and increase it to 14%. So keeping it at 14%, inflation did not even mind what has been happening. At some point, one of the finest policy makers in Nigeria was on this show and said that, well, you will see the effect in 6 months. From June till December, inflation has consistently increased. Not just at what we had at 16.48, it went to 17, to 18, and even now 18.55. And many analysts, including our organization, have said that what we are going to see in January, or for December figures or January figures, it's not that inflation is going to come down significantly. Inflation may also increase slightly, because December itself as a month and January would reduce inflation one way or the other. The question now is, what is the real cause of this inflation? Because Monetary Policy Authority has tried to solve inflation problem by considering money supply as indicator solely, by adjusting MPR, by also looking at interbank lending rate. In fact, it may interest you to know that interbank lending rate reduced from October, where you had say 36.42. It halved. It even went below half in November to 15.21. And as I speak, as at December, you have 10.39. But as inflation reduced, even with the fall in interbank lending rate, inflation is still persistent. Now, what is the main cause of inflation? As a matter of fact, when government, fiscal authority, which includes federal government, because they have the power of purse, they control the budget. When government try to adjust the rate, which is function of central bank, and also when you look at the activity of fiscal authority, it's not in line with monetary authority. This is what we have as at say February 2016, which is still ongoing, and it's like a cancer that has eaten fabrics of many economy that are in absolute depression right now, economy that are in recession, and so many other economies. We call it sudden stop phenomenon. Sudden stop phenomenon. Before now, we get a lot of foreign direct investment into our economy. As a matter of fact, around May 2016, the vice president, who is the head of Nigeria economy management team, he said at some point that about 83 billion US dollars has left Nigeria because of policies, because of lack of confidence, because of current economic issues, etc., etc. If over 80 billion US dollars, let me tell you the implication. The 2017 budget, if you convert it to dollar, what you have is only 23 billion US dollars. But 83 billion, so that you understand the figure, 83 billion US dollars has left the country. What does that mean? You will not just have inflation, you're also going to have stagnation. If you combine inflation and stagnation together, you are going to have stagflation.
But that's what we're suffering already.
That's what we are suffering. But how do we get here? Which has been mentioned. Now, sudden stop itself is what they call reduction in capital inflow into a country. Why? Our exchange rate policy. I'm taking this completely out of money supply. Look at exchange rate policy. You have almost 5 to 7 exchange rates. I say 5 to 7 because I can see here new ones. CBN, what you display on your screen is 305. At the street market, what you get is 500. What you get for licensed BD is about 390. If you are traveling, there is a special agency or a special agent that will give you a 370 something. If you are operating at interbank level, you get a 315. Now, if I come to a country called Nigeria, because I love black people and I love the policies maker in Nigeria, and I bring my fund and you're going to give me 305, When I want to leave, there are so many policy bottlenecks. How do I exchange the same for 305? That means I will possibly exchange at 400 or 500 as the case may be. By committing no offense, I must have lost about 20 to 25% of my wealth simply because I want to do business in Nigeria. Now, why was this biting so hard? You would remember that towards the end of 2015, JP Morgan started warning Nigeria that we're going to delist you. We did not know the effect of delisting a country. Now we are experiencing it. And what does it mean? It means that even your ability to get funds from abroad. Federal government have been saying we are going to borrow money. What we have seen in terms of borrowing money is to borrow money even from Nigerians, which means we are only circulating money that was not enough. And that will generate an effect, which economists will call the crowd-out effect. The crowd-out effect means that money that are with the Nigerian commercial banks will be collected back either by borrowers or even taken by those deposit money banks, and deposit money banks, yes, and take it to central bank as lending. They will use it to buy bonds from federal government. They will use it to buy treasury bills at good interest rate, which of course it also proves when your interest is this high, it also proves to you that you have sudden stop phenomenon. So instead of getting money from abroad as injection to our economy, in order to grow the economy, because the problem we have, we need external force to come. But the question is, bringing funds to Nigeria economy, foreign investors or foreign financiers are very skeptical about economy. And that is understandable because of the kind of policy we have. Today you see this FX policy, tomorrow we've reversed it, we are going to this new policy, no, we've reversed it again, we've going to that, and we've reversed almost a dozen of very important policy just in 18 months. And that is accountable for the large amount of FX we have lost to all of this policy. I understand that there are factors such as the crude oil prices is going down. I understand there are factors, but this is not the first time we'll be having a downward trend in terms of, say, oil bust instead of oil boom. This is not the first time, but things has not been this bad totally.
Where should the fixing of this inflation rates come from specifically? Because like I did say earlier on, that the central bank, which you've alluded to, have tried to tame inflation.
Yes.
It's not tameable.
Yes.
In fact, as they try to tame it, it worsens,
yes,
so to speak, because they are using monetary tools and monetary adjustments for structural problems or for structural challenges. So it's not going to work, so to speak. So where should the tweaking come from? Where should that solution come from? Because if you take a look at even the government now on the fiscal side do not have money right now, enough money to pump into the economy. The minister says that we don't have any choice than to borrow. You understand what I mean? You also said foreign investors do not really have confidence in our economy right now because our economy is solely dependent on oil, and oil prices have gone down. I think the last time I checked, oil prices was trading for around $55 US. That's even a good one, unlike what we had before, 25, 30 to 30 US. So where will that money come from? Where will the solution, where is the joker?
Thank you so very much. I've said this time and again, I really don't know why Nigerian monetary authority and Nigerian government, fiscal authority, are afraid of what we call quantitative easing. I've said it on your show 2 times and also at different platforms. Quantitative easing has been done by several countries of the world. Apart from even going to quantitative easing, as I speak, Naira has reduced back to zero. Naira, as we have it now, has reduced back to zero. That is why, and I know a lot of listeners at home can check, how often do you find 5 Naira, 10 Naira, 20 Naira? The commonest one now is 15 Naira. I will explain that. How often do you find 100 Naira? The commonest one is 200, 500, and 1,000. The implication is that the cost of printing 5, 10, and 20 Naira is even more than those money. So it is lost on the part of government or monetary authority to put those money to print that, and that is why government at one point was advocating for let us go to 5,000 Naira.
Yes.
However, if you go to 5,000 Naira, you are only postponing the doomsday. What we should do is to redenominate like Ghana did. Yes, our currency. And Ghana is not the first country to do it. Several countries of the world have done that. Now, if you do that, let's just paint a scenario. This conversation is huge.
So what I'm saying is not limited to this. As a matter of fact, there are papers, there are documents which I've written, my organization have studied and written about this. We are not saying that GDP will increase, no. But we are saying that there will be ease for doing transaction. We are saying that it will propel GDP. It's not that GDP itself, it's economic activity that will drive that. However, what are the benefits? If you go to America, for instance, and you want to buy a suit, and you are told that a suit is, say, $100, or say $300. If you come to Nigeria, you want to buy the same suit, and somebody tells you the suit, let's assume the clothes disappear from America and appears somewhere in, we say, Nigeria, in Abuja, and tells you that the suit is 150,000. What are you going to do? You possibly shout, 150,000 just to buy a suit? But in America, you were told $300, not knowing that if you go by the street rate, 500 times 300, what do you have? So you're going to be, yes, you're going to be scared that, why do I have this? Now, if you do that and you redenominate the Naira by, say, 2 digits, 100 Naira effectively will give you 1 Naira. What it means is that the current 100 Naira that is disappearing will reduce to just 1 Naira coin. If you want to buy a recharge card of 100 Naira now, it becomes 1 Naira. If you are giving the person 1 Naira coin, it becomes meaningful. It will not tell you I don't like coins. The person will be willing to accept it. Also, the 50 Naira becomes 50 kobo.
You know this denomination issue, you are bringing it back again to the fore because it was a debate that was on about 5-6 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
About 2007.
Yes, even during Charles Chukwuma Soludo
days, 10 years ago.
As the central bank governor and all of that. Even the issue of the 5,000 Naira also came up when the Emir of Kano now, Mohammed Sanusi II, was the central bank governor, and a lot of people really said, no, that's not what we needed. Are you now saying that we cannot solve this inflation problem except we redenominate our currency?
That is one of the issue, because you see the current issue we have with inflation is it is currency driven. Our currency has depreciated and it continues to depreciate from time to time. So if you say that you want to solve inflation figures, I don't care. Some agencies may come tomorrow and publish wrong figures, and we believe all is well. You see, the issue we have is like a child that called his mother and say, Mom, I have a headache. And the mother said, it is well with you. Let's go and pray about it. Meanwhile, the child is not having a headache. When the father came and said, is he a headache? Don't worry, I will give you paracetamol, or I will give you this drug or that. The child truly has Ebola. So to solve it, you don't
So headache was a symptom?
It was a symptom.
That he was feeling and said...
All we have been looking at 11, 12, and 14, sustaining 14%. I won't be surprised if the MPC wants to sustain 14%. 14% itself is the highest ever in the history of MPR. MPC, Committee Fixing MPR. But as it solved, for about 8 months, for about 9 months now, we have had the MPR at the highest point. So has it solved any problem? Inflation has consistently increased. And interbanking lending rate that spiked at some point has also reduced back to 10%. Any little reduction, it may go to about 9%. That is in exchange rate. So what are we saying? We should look at how to use money supply to solve the problem. Now, for this to be solved, to help monetary authority, we now need to point fingers to the fiscal authority by looking at our textile industry, which of course is not producing most of the clothes.
But hold on, let me take you up on what you said earlier, which is we can also go for quantitative easing. Can we go for quantitative easing when we don't have money right now?
Quantitative easing, we can.
Okay. We can. How do we do that? Because if you take a look at the quantitative easing that was done in the United States during the Obama days, for example, they pumped in about $85 billion to resuscitate companies and all of that, the auto industry and all of that. And it was one of those things that President Obama said was part of his legacies, reviving the auto industry, putting back Americans to work. GDP now seems to be growing. Unemployment now at about 4.9%. That's about 5%. So how can we really have that kind of quantitative easing in Nigeria?
The question we should ask is, how did Obama get the money? Was it that Obama printed money? No. They were digital money. Simple.
The Fed was buying bonds.
Yes. But with government money that was not there. And several other countries of the world are copying Obama. It is when this now comes to textbooks in Nigeria or in Africa, that is when some African countries will now say, okay, let's see it as a third option. But right now that is fresh, Not totally fresh. It's been around for a long time, though. But Africans are still contemplating. We still want to do what is usual. So beyond that, we also need to solve this because, you know, it is assumed that when it comes to inflation, it is purely a monetary thing. I don't agree with that. Monetary authority has a significant role to play. However, if fiscal authority is not also helping, because this inflation we have is imported inflation, because of exchange rate, the value of our currency is depreciating almost on month in, month out. If you go to stores, you see the price you met last week is not going to be the same price you have this week. And Nigerians are afraid. So even if you want to do something in 2 months and you prefer to buy it now, driving velocity of money. Now, the more you keep buying, you are also helping inflation to grow by not waiting. So we need to build confidence in people. We need to build business confidence.
What of this scenario that if Nigeria gets out of a recession, our inflation rate will go down? Perhaps that could be like a layman's argument.
Well,
that we are in recession. Kemi Adeosun, World Bank, IMF have said Nigeria's economy will pull out of recession this year. World Bank says a 1% growth for us, GDP rate. IMF was less optimistic, 0.8%. Federal government says with this budget of recovery and growth, we are going to grow. So does it mean, for example, that if we get out of recession, our inflation rate will begin to trend downwards?
Let me quickly remind you that the same IMF and World Bank projected Nigerian growth to be 3% in 2016. Nigeria, rather than having positive growth, had minus 2.24%.
So
there's too much expectation from the world on Nigeria. They place too much expectation for us. But are we serious looking at our economy locally? It's another question to ask entirely. If they are projected that you are going to have we are going to have 3% growth rate, and federal government is saying we have 4% in 2016. All we had was negative growth.
And I wonder how we are going to even get that growth.
Well, 2017 budget yes, is lower than 2016 budget. You may not agree, but I will tell you. If you look at nominal figures in economics, it will lead you to failure. But when you look at the real figure, why? Inflation, the budget for 2016 was 6.06. 2017 is 7 point, but both in Naira.
Yes.
Dollars as at 2016 was 197. Dollar as at 2017 is 305. When you divide both by dollar, because when you compare Nigeria,
so the
you will not compare Nigeria with Ghana. You compare Nigeria with Ghana,
I understand your argument.
So it will give you, last year is $30 billion. This year is $23 billion.
So in essence, the federal government has lesser money to spend.
Yes, lesser
in dollar terms.
And government is saying that we are going to spend more this year. And I wonder where you're going to spend more for. You know why? Most of the expenditure of government will be based on importation. So if it's based on importation, it will go back to the dollar. And if you go back to the dollar, economists will want to measure what is marginal propensity to import. So if you measure marginal propensity to import, which is even increasing day by day, why? Because most SMEs and large organizations are closing down shops.
So in essence, we do not have an expansionary budget for this year.
As a matter of fact, we have a contractionary budget. And we can,
in dollar terms.
There is nothing called dollar terms. There is nothing called
even in nominal terms.
International terms. And it's still nominal. Because we have not made provision on inflation. By the time you make provision for inflation, it is even lower. International terms, why? Because if you compare Nigeria with Gabon, with Egypt, with US, with Israel, with Saudi Arabia, everything comes back to the dollar. And we are going to look at your local exchange rate to determine what the value is.
What does that actually tell us of those managing our economy, so to speak? Because for those of us that read the economy on a daily basis, it seems, I don't know, it seems that the solutions are there. I was reading something from Atedo Peter's side, I think,
I saw that.
over the weekend and all of that. And, I was just trying to struggle with myself in terms of, even with what you said right now, which I think is a very cogent argument. But I know that most of us would not have looked at it this way in terms of, Nigeria, yes, even for those that analyze the economy on television or in print, we have an expansionary budget. In fact, from even our readings, the 2017 budget is higher, 20% higher than the 4% higher.
But it's actually 23% lower.
And what do we do? How do Nigerians now? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to me and you. How do we mitigate the effect of this inflation? Is there a way?
Well, the Nigerians, out of about 4 components of the economy, which is talking about consumption, highly driven by household, talking about investment, driven by firm, government, that's part of government. Government is already contracting. And also trade. Trade is the difference between your export and import. So, but let's look at what affects household or affect individuals, which to some extent I may want to extend to firm. What does individual need to do? You need to start learning new skills, and you need to start doing business. Because the money you had yesterday is not the same as the money you have today.
Must everyone be a businessman?
Even get employment or add value. When I say do something, just add value. Find something to add. The time of free fall of apple, free fall of food is gone. It is gone, and it's the truth. Right now, everybody needs help, including government. There are two kinds of people. I've said it time and again. It is problem solvers and part of the problem to be solved. I'm afraid. I think even our government may be part of the problem to be solved.
I think
it is the truth.
You know, that the government is part of our problem, or the government is the problem.
It's part of the problem to be solved. Because even
well
Nigerians, yes, because even Nigerians, we have entitlement mentality. Government should do everything for us. So also for business people, interest rates, it seems to be easing. Is not as high as we have it. So banks will be willing to give, but who will bank give to? Will they give to real sector? Will they give to SMEs?
The banks are even agitating now that they are not giving even all marketers anymore and all of that.
As a matter of fact.
And the banks perhaps could also be a problem.
Yes.
As it were. But if you also take a look at the banks, you will say, oh, they are also part of the larger society. So they are also there to make profits.
They are there to make profits.
They are holding depositors' money, my money and yours, and they need to account for it.
So this is what I would like to then say. I mean, to
very
say
quickly in 30 seconds.
Our economy to come out of this, what some people will call recession, which I've chosen to call depression.
I was coming to that. Do you still hold that view?
That's the truth. It's becoming clearer to you, isn't it? That we're in depression.
Quickly, go ahead. How do we now get out of it?
I think, therefore I exist. We need thinkers. We need policymakers. We need rigorous study.
Okay.
To change our economy from where it is to where we want it to be.
In 10 seconds, should President Buhari reshuffle his cabinet?
Absolutely, President Buhari should reshuffle his cabinet. President Buhari even knows he needs to do that. And the more the time is losing, I'm telling you, the problem may be prolonged. You know why? Since this administration came to power, they always act, but they act late. That's the truth.
Do you have confidence in our economic managers?
I don't know the economic managers.
Okay, let's leave it at that.
So that will determine, I don't even know who I will have confidence in. I don't know them.
Let's leave that for another day. Thank you very much, Mr. Alaje, for coming on today's show. Thank you so very much for having me. All right, I've been speaking with Paul Alaje, who is the lead economist at SPM Professionals, and we've been looking at inflation rates in Nigeria, the way inflation rates have been skyrocketing, recession, as well as other things that we looked at on today's edition of the program. Like I did say earlier, that the Monetary Policy Committee meeting begins today. The two-day policy meeting ends tomorrow. We'll keep you up to speed with that. Do I really see any change? But at the end of tomorrow, we'll definitely know. Many thanks for joining us on today's edition of the program. Be the best you can be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Please join us again tomorrow for another edition. The news is up next, I suppose. Do stay.